The Clark County Comprehensive Growth Management Plan update was adopted in 2016 and is in the process of being updated. This update refreshes policies and elements regarding population and employment growth for the next 20 years. State law requires an update to the plan by December 31, 2025. Recently, we sat down with Program Manager Jose Alvarez and Planner Jenna Kay from Community Planning to discuss two remaining elements of the plan to be decided: housing and climate change.
Hello, I'm Jim Demlin with Clark County Close-Up. Thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Thanks for having us.
First, what is a comprehensive growth management plan and why do we need it?
Well, the comprehensive plan guides how the county will grow over the next 20 years, and it's based on the population forecast for the county and how the county plans to accommodate the housing and jobs needed for that population growth. And just for a little bit of context, the county currently has a little over 500,000 people living in it today. And in 20 years, we're expected to have over 700,000 people here. So this plan is planning for the growth of about 200,000 more people. And so, like I said, it's helping with the housing, the job planning, and then also how to protect the environment as that growth happens.
Okay, and I'm just thinking when you're talking 200,000, that's like what's the Camas population? Yeah, wow. Okay, so the plan was last updated in 2016. What time period will be covered under this latest plan update?
This plan update is going to cover the years 2025 to 2045.
Okay, so for the average resident or business owner, why is this plan important?
Yeah, well, this plan, it's a really long-term vision plan, and you might be interested in the plan if you're curious what future development where it's planned to happen in the county. So depending on where you live, work, or spend your time, you might want to check out what's being proposed or considered for where more housing, for instance, is being planned for. And so that's one area where someone might be interested. The other place people might want to pay attention to is that the comprehensive plan also includes a whole suite of policies that guide county decision-making over the 20-year period. And so there are policies on all sorts of things from housing and transportation to environmental topics. So paying attention to what's being proposed to change in that set of policies might also be of interest to someone to find out what's in them.
Okay. Does this plan include all of Clark County or just unincorporated areas? And how do you incorporate then the cities within this plan?
So the plan is countywide. The county has jurisdiction over the rural areas and the unincorporated areas. The cities are responsible for the incorporated areas and the areas within their urban growth areas. The any changes to the urban growth area has to be approved by the county council, and we're required to coordinate and have our plans be sort of cohesive. We have countywide planning policies that apply to all of the jurisdictions and the county, and so that's how we incorporate those together.
Okay. The County Council has already approved some elements of the plan, including population projections. What are some of the major elements that were already been approved?
So in addition to the population, the council has also approved housing, number of housing units that will be needed. The state has come up with new guidance on how to estimate that housing growth to account for the shortage of housing we have overall, and to include some market factors to account for vacancy rates. So that's a new calculation that was done, and the council has allocated that housing to each of the jurisdictions so that they know what they need to plan for, along with the employment and jobs that are going to be needed over the next 20-year period. The other item that the council has already taken action on is the 3 land use alternatives that are going to be studied in our environmental impact statement to review what the impacts are and from that, the council will select a preferred alternative, but that hasn't been done yet.
Okay. So that gets to the other topics. So what are some elements of the plan that still need to be decided?
So after we have the environmental impact statement completed, there'll be a draft that will be issued, and there'll be a 30-day comment period on that. So that's an opportunity for the public to be involved in. Once that's done, then the council can either select one of the alternatives or from the range of alternatives to select a preferred alternative. Once that's completed, then we will do our capital facilities analysis to determine the amount of and cost of utilities that will be needed to serve the population, and we'll be collaborating with our partners, the water and sewer districts, parks, fire, and the school districts.
Okay. Let's talk about housing. Having an adequate supply of affordable housing has been a major issue throughout this region. How did this plan update address the need for more housing units?
So the state has spent a lot of time in the last 3 or 4 legislative sessions really addressing housing policies. And so it's on the county now and the jurisdictions to sort of implement that legislation. As I mentioned earlier, the state has come up with a new tool, the Housing for All planning tool, that really gets specific about the amount of housing needed at different income levels and with specific number of units for each jurisdiction. So as part of this process, we've gone through that analysis and used our vacant buildable lands model to help with determining what the allocation is going to be, so all of the jurisdictions know what they need to plan for and have appropriate zoning to allow for that type of housing to develop over the next 20 years.
And so when you're talking about a variety of housing types, things like ADUs, apartment complexes, duplexes?
Yes, all of those are going to be, the state has allowed for those types of development to be allowed outright in jurisdictions, and primarily where it used to be exclusively single-family housing. So for example, the regulations for both the City of Vancouver, Camas, and Washougal are going to be affected where they will, for the City of Vancouver, they're going to be required to allow up to 4 dwelling units, up to a 4-plex where there is currently single-family homes allowed. For Camas and Washougal, those are duplexes, and if they're within a 1/4 mile of transit, in Vancouver, it can go up to 6 units, and I think in Camas, it can go up to 4 units. So there's going to be a lot more diversity of housing. The county started this process earlier. In 2022, we put together a group that our Housing Options and Study that identified some strategies to implement, and those were adopted by council in 2024 to allow for more middle housing, which would allow duplexes, triplexes, and 4plexes in those similar zones that the state legislature is addressing.
Right. What portions of the housing element still need to be decided?
So building on from the county's perspective in our unincorporated area, there is our medium density housing. With the changes that we made in 2024 to our middle housing, it created an overlap with what currently is allowed in our medium density housing. And one of the things that was identified in these income bands was that we had a real shortage of sort of multifamily housing. So we're looking at addressing that with either by expanding the amount of medium density and high density land that we have and increasing the number of units that would be allowed and creating a more stepwise system between our lower density to our medium and higher densities.
Okay. Now state law now requires that the county counties add in a climate change element to its comprehensive plan. What types of information does this climate change element need to address?
So the county's climate change element has to include a set of policies and actions the county will take over the next 20 years that will do two things. The policies need to help improve community resilience to the impacts from climate change, and they need to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So those are the two sort of substantive components. But these policies also are required to prioritize benefits to the county's most vulnerable communities who are at higher risk to impacts from climate change.
Okay, so how have you been seeking public input on the climate change element?
Yeah, well, there's two key ways. One is we formed a few advisory groups to help county staff with our climate work, and they put a lot of time and effort into that over the past year or so, and helped us develop a draft list of climate element policies. So that's one way. The other way is that we did a lot of in-community engagement activities and events to collect community-wide feedback to then feed into that process of developing some draft climate policies. And one of our advisory groups, called the Environmental Justice Coalition, was made up of 15 community-based organizations who helped the county with our outreach and really made sure when we went out into the community to collect feedback that we were reaching more underserved community members and making sure their feedback was folding into the policy process that we were working on.
Okay. So where are we in the process of developing this climate change element, and when do you anticipate any hearings on this item?
Yeah, so we just recently wrapped up our work with our advisory groups, and so we now have a draft list of climate policies, and staff is currently working on taking this list and organizing it into a new climate chapter that is going to be proposed as an addition to the county's comprehensive plan. And our next step is essentially to get it ready for the adoption process. So it will go before the Planning Commission. There will be a hearing where members of the public can provide comment and testify, and then it will go to the County Council, who will ultimately vote on this. But all of the hearings on this climate chapter are the same hearings as the hearings for the entire comprehensive plan update, because this is a chapter within the broader comprehensive plan project. So they're expected later this year, towards the end of the entire comprehensive plan update.
Got it. Okay. So then, again, between now and the end of the year, there'll be multiple hearings regarding these elements that still need to be cited. So how can people still get involved in this update process?
So the best way to get involved is to sign up for our mailing list and check our website. We send out notifications when we have hearings coming up or events. We're looking at having 3 open houses at the end of May, early June, to provide an overview of the alternatives that are going to be studied in the EIS, and then share with the public that information, and the comment period that will happen when we get our draft environmental impact statement. And then, as Jenna said, we will have public hearings with both the Planning Commission and County Council to adopt the plan as we go through the process of the final adoption.
Okay, so for people to find out more information about the comprehensive plan, where can they check?
Our webpage.
Yeah, it's clark.wa.gov /community-planning. And then a telephone number, I have 564-397-2280.
Yes.
Well, I know this has been a huge lift for your team, so thank you very much, and good luck with wrapping this up.
Thank you.
Thank you.